Welcome everyone. I'm Brenda McKinley. I'm the library director here at the Ridgefield Library, and I'd like to welcome you all to our opening keynote talk of our fall series, The Curious Mind, Discovery and Exploration. We've got some brochures on the talks, and that will be in the rest of the series, so they're in the back of the room by the cookies. So please grab one of those. For me, there have been many unexpected pleasures since becoming the Ridgefield Library Director back in January of 2017. And chief among these has been meeting and getting to know Rudy Ruggles. In the spring of 2017, the library honored Rudy and his wife Sally at our Great Expectations Gala for their impactful support of the library and so many other organizations in Ridgefield. A favorite memory of mine from my very first week of work was our then development director, Laureen Bubniak, who's actually in the audience, inviting me to a meeting with Rudy to discuss gala logistics. And then Rudy and I promptly derailed the entire meeting by getting into a wide-ranging discussion on the nature of memory and neurobiology. So we still, no doubt, have much to share on that topic. But Rudy's passion for lifelong learning and curiosity is inspiring. The favorite card in my Rolodex is a plain white card with simple black print that reads, Rudy L. Ruggles Jr., International Man of Mystery. So who is Rudy L. Ruggles Jr.? Scientist, philanthropist, explorer, national security expert, and inventor. Rudy currently serves as the Adjunct Professor and Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the J. Craig Venter Institute, Venter being, of course, but for those who may not know, the first scientist to complete the sequencing of the human genome. But throughout his career, Rudy has been posted and worked in multiple countries, including China, Iran, Algeria, Australia, for more than 40 years working in national security and the intelligence services. He was elected a fellow member of the Explorers Club in 1980, and his expeditions have included travel to the North Pole, Antarctica, tropical rainforests, and an 8,500-foot dive in a Russian deep submersible to study the biodiversity of the mid-Atlantic ridge hydrothermal vent fields. Everything. Rudy has flown in Russian MIGs. He's lectured at the U.S. Army War College. He was a Senior Associate Physicist in IBM's research labs and a strategic planner for IBM at their corporate headquarters. He served as president at the Hudson Institute and in the U.S. Army Combat Engineers. He has received, which will not surprise anyone, numerous awards and academic honors. Tonight, Rudy will share how curiosity and asking the question, is it stimulating, rewarding, and worthy, have taken him to the ends of the earth. Our plan is to have time for questions too, but I want to thank you all for being here and thank Rudy for kicking off Library's Dive into Curiosity.
That sort of summary is usually, say, in an academic setting or other setting where you pass around information about others who will be participating and kind of credentials and get you squared away. It's normally not listed as a challenge or something I have to explain in any way. But indeed, those things and more have occupied many years that I spent active since a youngster in various areas that fall into the area of curiosity. And it's interesting that the set of speakers who are coming up have difference, not just scientists, but it's those who humanities, writers, sculptors, artists. It doesn't have to manifest itself in any one particular way. And by the way, I wasn't a bully in your office there. You have a graduate degree in microbiology or neurobiology, so it wasn't like she wants to talk about, agenda, and I want to talk about this. I don't know. But I must say that it did sort of surprise, that introducing one another to talk about it. As I say, normally those kinds of, what I've done, what I've been, are credentialing, and you don't have to talk about it sort of while you're at the table. But now she's put me in the good place of actually explaining something. But I was thinking here because of your extensive description of things I've done. So I think not far below the surface is your Barnum and Bailey kind of this way, ladies and gentlemen, Thursday at 7 o'clock, need a curious man. I won't ask how many of you here are here for the long description or the Barnum and Bailey appeal. I don't know quite about it, but the curiosity. I could spend the time talking about curiosity, where it leads, active, passive, how it relates with creativity, knowledge, and then at the end, I've talked about it, but it's like describing for an hour the role of violin in symphony orchestras without ever playing music. So I won't do that to you. But on the other hand, I have a lot of photographs that if I show, it's like looking through a scrapbook without context. So some though I'm going to show some photos and that I hope have some relevance, and I just picked from, as Chris is here, a very large number of potential photos. And so in that case, I'm going to ask for audience participation in that. Put yourself behind, not looking at a scrapbook, put yourself behind the camera as if you were me, and try and capture like where the picture was taken, why I took it. And so the curiosity, I mean, people understand curiosity, I think, they think. But if you have curiosity, if you get in charades, how would you present curiosity? And each would have their own way. Yes, I've done a lot of things and didn't make them up. And I found when I was thinking about this, I have a tendency, if I know about a subject, if I'm giving a briefing, lecture, I'm comfortable giving the subject, but if something comes up that I don't know about, I think about it for a while, and then I write a memo to myself, and then read the memo to see what I know about it. Because you organize your thoughts in a different way if you're writing it down. You have a chance to think about it. But I'm partway through it, and normally don't use notes, partway through with this, cards, this, few little post-its, so that it's not quite in that completed state. So it's work in progress, but it doesn't make it less interesting for me. And the program shows that creativity expresses itself among speakers, scientists, artists, writers, and so forth. So it really is broad in scope. I pulled out Passport, and this is one that covers 10 years of Passports, but it's unusual in that it has twice as many pages as a normal Passport. And if you look at it, that's really big Passport. Basically, every page has a visa of some place from Mongolia to Madagascar, from Mali to Myanmar. All of this whole thing's filled with stamps and visas. So that's a lot of stuff. I can see what it is and backtrack the cat with some effort to put together what it was. But when I got this, it was empty. And we all start with an empty Passport. We don't know where we're going to end, but we start kind of the same way. And then maybe you can figure out from where you are how you got here. But so curiosity is kind of I think of the symbol for curiosity as being a question mark. And the world filters through that question mark. You carry around the world, some things interest you, some things don't. But you pick and choose. And wherever the opportunities are, or wherever curiosity leads you, you're going to come out to be in the area of the speakers. But part of the thing about curiosity is imagination. I was thinking, here we are in the library. It houses thousands of books, many organized by subject, decimal system, other by author. We can take them out, we can have them. But think of this library if they have both the books and the authors. So you could withdraw the book and the author, take them home, take a couple of books, a couple of authors for a couple of weeks, and you'd have much more experience. You wouldn't be reading a residual product of that author, but you'd learn something about them. And simple, over the years, a lot of times I had somebody who's a taxi driver, Uber driver, whatever, and I've asked, so it's appropriate, and mostly it does, where's your family from? Not where are you from, that sounds sort of, where are you from? But where's your family from? And like 95% of the time, like nobody's ever asked me anything, and sometimes I'll recognize their names from where they are and been there. And so talk for 15 minutes, an hour about their experience, where they're from, what the country's like, and so forth. So I've accumulated hundreds of like short stories that if I didn't ask them, where is your family from, I'd never know. So really, curiosity can be passive, or you can kind of turn it to make it more, interesting life. And that is a theme that passed through my life. And part of it has to do with context. And so my parents were born before the First World War. So they were growing up First World War, Great Depression, and then Second World War. I was born in 1938, actually November 11th, exactly 20 years to the signing of the armistice ending the First World War. That we've been commemorating the day. That's why I spent a lot of my life in national security. The correlation is not there. The correlation is there, but not the cause. But so they grew up in that. If you've grown up as they did First World War and Depression, Second World War, you're pretty risk averse. There's stability, so that they aren't job switching, and so they want to have stability because the greatest threat to them anyway has been the fact that the world changes. You've got to relate. Not when I grew up. I was born in 38, so it was just before the war started. And then when I was younger, there was rationing. And rationing with gas, food, rubber, so you weren't racing all over the place, going to one thing or another, people weren't taking you, occupying you every minute. It wasn't, you didn't hire somebody, to cut the lawn while you're in watching, video games. And so, and the one person I was born in Evanston, Illinois. I lived a little bit north of there, and about 5 miles away from the lake. But it was a woodly road, and it was surrounded by woods. And and there was one fellow who was my age who lived across the field in front of me. And so we got to know each other. But that was my circle of friends. So there was a lot of time wandering around in the woods. And various things came up. I built some rickety attempts at tree houses and so forth. But I didn't know loneliness because I didn't know companionship. So it wasn't I was moping at home. It made interesting use of the time. And so I wasn't influenced by stability. I was influenced by having an opportunity that I didn't recognize at the time that was quite unusual and nurturing in terms of curiosity and the interest in following through. And also, when you're wandering in the woods, you kind of test your bravery. You build things, climb trees and so forth, and develop a sense of courage and risk. And I continued in doing things that involved that, not because I should have gritted my teeth, but it was part of the world I knew. The opportunity, some risk associated, be it personal or otherwise. And I didn't have, as the opportunities came up, as I said, I could backpack the path, like the passport, I can go backwards. And it astounds me that, there is, I guess, curiosity really does move and mind us way through that. But just being curious doesn't mean it's going to unroll in that way. And I certainly didn't anticipate doing a lot of things. Somebody's sheer chance, somebody meeting people who had common interests, they met other people and so forth. And so it didn't seem like a miracle. I mean, when I look back and you tell me all the things I did, it's kind of an interesting thing. But because I can attest to it, and I can talk about the individual things, but normally I don't, because, as I say, it's in like credentials in a meeting, and so you kind of know who each other are, but you don't stand up and talk about how you got to the meeting, what lay behind your expertise. So, so it does, curiosity can be nurtured, it can be snuffed, depending in part upon the environment and those around you. And whether they cultivate curiosity. There's some teachers in the room that, curiosity can result in distracted students. I was labeled a distracted student from time to time because I just didn't sit in a circle. And the stories are being, I knew what the stories were, but I wasn't going to be pushed around. But just there were other things that interested me, and the stories were like on the slow side. So story time wasn't the most exciting. Maybe to the teacher, because we all sat in one place. Sit there and read. So it served a purpose for the teacher, but not always for the students. And so there are all sorts of bits and pieces that add up to leading a life that results in a curious person. And I'm, described as curious, both senses of the word, and as well as someone who's interested in exploring things that come to mind and using some imagination. I say, like the library, think of it, house books and the authors. What a different place it would be. Talking to a driver who's from someplace, Raleigh or someplace I've been, his astonishment and mine. And I even had a driver from, he was from Iraq, and Shami was still in Iraq, but he was here, and he married a woman who's from Morocco. When I was in Algeria, I used to live in Morocco for an hour. I've been there since. And I said, oh, I love Morocco, and the food's so good. So we talked about it. And so got me this when I was out in La Jolla, California, with Senior Associate. And so I went back to the hotel, and then about 4 o'clock, the front desk called and said, your driver called, and he's going to be at the front, in front of the hotel in about 15 minutes. And I kind of checked my wallet, and I was leaving in the car. And so we came by, and his wife had cooked a Moroccan meal, earthenware thing, and said, we go to the desk, pick it up tomorrow. And who would have known? And I'm totally unpredictable, but just an accidental spin-off, byproduct of taking some interest in him, and also having some selective affinity, some things in common. And so the more you do, the more people you have something in common with, or if you don't, you're also interested. Like in Washington last year or so, the taxi driver, and I noticed he had a cross hanging from the mirror, and it had little wooden beads, and the cross had little wooden beads, and he was briefly on. So, and I recognized, so I said, are you from that has the Coptic Church, I don't remember the second, but on the coast. And so he's from Ridgefield, which is right next door. And so we got talking about it. There's a big Coptic church in Washington. It's described the Coptic ceremonies and what Easter is like and so forth. But, who would have known? Ethiopia. And so it's amazing how many stories there are out there and how much more interesting it makes life. And so, a number of the things that are listed on what I've done are based on following my interests and meeting others by chance or by design who share those interests, and they tend to cascade if you sort of have a meeting of the minds or find each other of interest, and so I've tended to just follow that scent, and it really, I mean, partly it has to do obviously with some diligence, and you mentioned IBM research, I'm a physicist, and so I had endured the process of getting a degree from Harvard in physics, and so it wasn't an unusual transition to go there. I know it was a fascinating place with some excellent workers. And after a couple of years, it was in the early 60s, after a couple of years, I decided, having still been very interested in the subject, that rather than apply for another critical skills deferment, that out of sense of duty and also some curiosity that I enlisted in the Army. And I did. And so in basic training, cortex, after basic, well, I was made an acting sergeant just because, I don't know, acting sergeant. Ask why. Why in the world would you give me this? Here's why leader be. And so after that, there were 3 of us picked out of high explosive, use mines, lay mines, and so forth. And not something you use necessarily the rest of your life, but it does teach some delicacy and respect. The graduating classes are what I call A's. So explosive didn't quite make the high explosive cut. And so I went back and I was in Fort Sheridan, Illinois, which is Fifth Army headquarters, which really represents the whole basic Midwest as well as those deployed. And so waiting for me and the Army be in for a penny and for a pound, I was waiting for the next Ranger class to start on Fort Benning. And guess what? The Cuban Missile Crisis had just, I was at home. So happened my home is not that far away. Army would have never put you anywhere near your home, but I enlisted to New York. So I was at home and the phone rang. I was in uniform, but just evening leave. And so my lawyer said, "The phone's for you." And I said, "Hello," and he said, "Return to base." So that was the beginning of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so I was, and during that period, of course, where the world knew a lot more than I did, because, but I did know that, my colleagues, they were cleaning rifles and rolling packs, which we hadn't done for a while. So during that period of time, and it was resolved, and we learned a lot about it later, but even knew head of the U2 project and had the copy of the picture that was shown to Kennedy after the U2 flew over Cuba, and so who knew I was going to be there, and running an institute that was preeminent in the field of nuclear warfare and classified work, and had a Q clearance, the same as Oppenheimer and a bunch of others. It just kind of built and built and built. I can ramble on about that, but just not mystified as you are. I can put together the pieces, but a lot of them just happened. I met people, they knew people, I had some skills that applied, and so that's my course. But I mean, everybody has an opportunity when they start to do something. Depends upon what your risk aversion and what your willingness to take some risks and whether you're willing to. But and certainly stability is more appealing and stable role. And so I wasn't always on the rails, but there were those who helped me get back on the rails if I made wrong decisions on the whole, and at least encouraged me. So it wasn't just a smooth path, but it certainly makes up an interesting mosaic of life and experiences that if I didn't sort of have that ingrown curiosity that was in part a byproduct of the time, because I had time by myself. Matter of fact, I'm a kindergarten dropout. because I grew up again with like one friend in the woods. And so when it came time to go to kindergarten, that was a public school, and there were all these kids from all the neighborhoods, and they were tussling and listening. I said, what's this? I had really I wasn't prepared. But, and I put up kind of quite a fuss, sufficient fuss that like next year maybe. Apparently quite convincing. They played Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, and I was. So, obviously I've been, to some extent, socialized, that I behaved reasonably well in a small family and others, but I really hadn't been civilized. I hadn't known how to deal with groups. So that's, you say, well, that's okay, the next year you did well. Think back, if you look at Antarctic development, so but that's a pretty big fork in the road, or I can sort of feel more insightful about that transition from from living on my own as a kid, having glad to not knowing loneliness because I didn't know companionship, and so I can analyze it, or just as I'm now thinking about it a little bit at the time, I'm just a kid, so and again, the sort of simpler life I remember as as a youngster, and it must have been I moved from one house to the other in the area when I was 5th grade. And in simpler times, the government printing office would publish a catalog like every month with publication of all parts of the government, but all kinds of things. And so I had an account with the government printing office from whether you'd send in like $1 or something, and then you'd have that to draw down on. So I would do this thing, and something struck me as interesting. Like I remember there was something on how to splice fruit trees, and I thought, gee, so you get this little thing back from the mail. And it was sort of like having, that was the internet, but, you didn't say, gee, it's a real bummer. It's like when you lived in the dark ages, you said, what a bummer, we're living in the dark ages. And you kind of, wow, we're living in the Renaissance. You kind of don't know until later to get their name. I remember one point I was in Italy, and so they described the church as being a Gothic church, and I said, well, the Goths weren't really known for their taste, more for sort of rape and pillaging. And so, the Gothic church was called that by the next generation of designers that referred to this as more primitive. So, sometimes you don't know the water you're swimming in until later. And so I didn't know about things that I didn't think of being deprived of all these activities because I didn't bear it. So that it really does establish sort of a mindset, and everybody out. Thank you very much. Enjoyed talking to you. That's an interesting exit. Everybody, we're getting to stay. The teacher's letting to stay late. So, that's. I could go into again. I said when I'm thinking about a subject, I'm going to talk about. Making also scraps of notes and cards here and stuff. Haven't written that memo myself, but it's useful just to think about things. I remember when I was a kid, I had telegraph through radio. This was out in 6th grade or something. Telegraph through shortwave radio, pair phones, and pull in signals from around the world. And I had a globe, and so I learned something about geography. I think some people ought to know where one country is versus some other. If most don't, I don't know. There's some teachers in teaching of political geography or geography generally. It kind of makes a difference. You're talking about. Well, first when the Russians came in briefly into Ukraine, little green men, and they shot down a commercial aircraft and they scooted back out. We sent some American troops. That was in the eastern edge of Ukraine. We sent some American troops over Ukraine that weren't combative, but Russia was known as developing a strategy that was like, don't break, breaking the glass on the car thing. they're just short of your breaking point, just short of like worldly, just along the edge. And so the goal was that, to ask people, do you agree that U.S., agree or disagree, U.S. Troops in Ukraine? The majority said yes. And I asked, where is Ukraine? Well, they have absolutely no South America. They have absolutely no idea where Ukraine was. And it does make a difference. I don't know, the teachers can tell me later. But I have the sense that, really don't learn it. I mean, geopolitics, you hear about all the time, but you got to know the geo part. So those things made a difference at that time. And certainly my given ceremonies. I was born, as I say, on Armistice Day, and when I was growing up, stopped at 11 o'clock on November 11th. It was a Pledge of Allegiance. There was a certain sense of ceremony and of history. And obviously I didn't say at the time, gee, we can certainly not do that or any kind of reason. It just was part of the behavior, the teaching, the sense of combined patriotism. Not that there weren't issues and so forth, but there's some underlying values that, as I said, when I'm enlisted in the Army, probably a sense of duty and also of curiosity. And so those change with the times, but they can be taught or they can be engineered. You see how, I haven't got, okay. I figured there you are. Wait, I figured that, as I say, I could talk all the time about curiosities. I'm talking about the violin, roll of violin simply without ever playing music. I could talk about curiosity until your only question is, when will he ever stop? I don't want to. So I figured that I'd spend some time showing some photographs and relate them to curiosity. But also in ones that are more scenic and so forth, and any of them. I took virtually all of them, a couple of them include me, so I didn't take that. But think of yourself as being on my side of the camera, where I am, looking out and then selecting to take a picture of that. And so one of the expeditions went on, I mentioned that at the end of the report, the person said, for airfare, when you board, I'll just look at all your pictures and listen to all your stories because nobody else wants to. So, you're kind of in this position, trying to make it this isn't like my summer vacation, but different places and for a different purpose. And those curiosity, we're all born with curiosity. I'm curious about explore. If you wouldn't provide me with it. But in the Sahara, you carry water. But we're all born with curiosity. We're materialized in mother's womb, surrounded by liquid. Your umbilical cord, you're provided with nutrition, and you're becoming totally comfortable, proper temperature. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and you're forced and bone-crushing forces out into the alternative universe that you live the rest of your life in. Cut your food source. If you've been only in the dark, you don't know what light is. So suddenly you're exposed to light, it's totally foreign. If you squat, so you're breathing in air, you don't know what air is. So there you are, in this totally alternative universe. Then finally they look around and give you to the only person who looks like they may have had a worse day than you did, and that's your mother. And you find that's quite comfortable. She comes supplied with dual food supplies. So you work on from there. And then when you wait for slides. I think I have the card here, but you can turn on first slide. Zoom in, clear. First slide is my granddaughter, Luna. She was about 2 years old there. She's now in second grade. And curiosity, she's 2 years old. She's looking at this thing, comfortable and curious. I think that's a perfect curiosity picture. She just came with that curiosity, totally at ease with it. And there she is a couple of years later. She's ready to go in first grade. She's looking at a young woman, the wind, you know, what's my future, beautiful scenery, and there's her little brother looking for grubs. His curiosity is sort of at that level. His basic curiosity. And you know, we go through life, again, that's symbolic, but it's also, I think, a great picture. Be curious. Also, just looking up at the sky. And put yourself behind my camera. Somebody was giving a lecture a couple of years ago here in town about the sky and all different kinds of clouds. He said, don't look up. Don't just look down, see what you're going to trip over, but take a look up. And so that, that's the sky. These are reaching right out of my door. That's another one. And they're really dramatic. They don't have any meaning, but it's certainly a whole dimension of experience that's just available. 30 many days, not this summer, but it's there. They're there for the asking. I've taken different parts of the world just because suddenly, I mean, there's one I took in Page and Bar with them in Istanbul. And there's Hagia Sophia. I, of course, didn't know the crow was in the picture until after I took it. But it's hard to kind of put together that picture, except if you aren't there. And also think of yourself at my end of the camera looking out at the world. That's I like a lot of it. But, you know, if you didn't look out and decide that, well, this looks like a good picture and take it, I never would recall or even see or wonder at how there are crows all around it. Come on, that's too good. Thank you, Crow. I mentioned I had a friend across the field from where I was when I was growing up, and same age. And so we went to the same grade school, and we said, we went to the same high school, but it was 650 in my class. We went to different colleges, and we said, when we get out of college, we'll go around the world together. Well, we did. We lost track of each other for a while. We did go around the world together. And so this was in 1960. We were in Uttar Pradesh in India, and that's one of the pictures I took on that trip. They're the women with the brass, copper pot with the water. It could be except for the bicycle, 2,000 years ago. But that was, that trip and the experience, different countries, that kind of captures that still curiosity that made me take the picture then, not thinking that that'll be an iconic picture of anything, but that's part of the experience, not just the photo. There I am in French Polynesia. It looks just like it, and Polynesia should look. And there are a number of scenes around, but it's hot, humid, but it's like Valley High. And it's just an extraordinary place and experience, and there's more than just this shot to that trip. There's nature, Da Vinci and others have been trying to make things that fly, that like birds. Well, this bird has, I'm talking to pilots who enjoyed it, it has its spoilers up, it has its flaps down, it has its wings like this with its eagle on the end, so the vortices don't spill off, it keeps the lift. It has the wheels down, and it has this tail, which if you look at modern fighters, they don't just have the old-fashioned tail and wing. The fighters now have tails that are like this. And this one, this was in a fjord in Norway. And it was very windy, and he was maneuvering to come down. His tail was constantly moving, and there are the eyes. That nature did that job pretty damn well without Boeing or Rockwell or whatever. So, it is, think about that design. That's pretty damn perfect. Just perspective. And this is a train in Union Station in Washington. I got out. I thought, gee, interesting picture of perspective. I could have not taken the picture, but I would blow up with that. And it's really a good, you see it better than I do from here. But again, put yourself with the camera where I was and look out. And think of how your curiosity might have led you to a similar conclusion, or you've never noticed it, or whatever. I just happened to know, I mentioned the Explorer stuff. That's when I was elected a fellow, and a fellow member in 1980, and that's the medal I was awarded. And my sponsor was, that was Billy Arborough. Well, I probably wouldn't mean much to both of any of you, but he was the father of the Green Berets. And he started at Fort Bragg, and he retired. He was a lieutenant general, 3-star. And a picture of him was in the first class Green Berets, and he developed the training and everything, and tough. And President Kennedy standing there, and both of them shaking hands, presenting the first class of Green Berets. And the Army, in its very flexible ways, said, it's fine, but they aren't. No one is allowed to wear anything that isn't certified as Army. So can't wear Green Berets. So the president went back and wrote a presidential order to the Army saying, you will let these people wear Green Berets. And ever since then, every graduate of the Green Berets, just so on, has a number starting with 1 when Billy Arborough started. And he and I kept in touch after his retirement and beyond. And he was a gentleman's scholar soldier. I mean, he really was of the old. You could talk about Thucydides or anything with the same ease as you could talk about military tactics. And the Green Berets weren't just special ops, but they were trained to live for long periods of time in foreign locations, surviving, learning the languages. And so, but, she wouldn't say somebody who created that would be a gentleman scholar soldier, but he was, so vanishing degree. But an interesting, that tells to me an interesting story. And in the Explorers Club, as a matter of fact, when I was elected a fellow, the president was Sir Edmund Howard. And so, okay, 7:45. Evacuate. Are you pushing the button? No. I was saying that, I was mentioning that at Harvard, physicists would get together, sort of a get-together, and for an occasion where they awarded the so-called Ig Nobel Prize, and they give scientists have to give a sense of humor to each other. And so the eternal question is, how do you get somebody like me to get off of the podium? You have the red, green, blue, red, yellow, green lights, you have people waving in the background, you have all this. So the chairman one year had a 12-year-old daughter, and so she came to the thing and with a nice dress and so forth. And so when the speaker went over, she'd go and stand over there with her hands on her hips and say, I'm bored, I'm bored. and they'd get them off the podium. There are simple solutions sometimes to complicated problems. This is when I was down in the Antarctic, South Georgia Island. There's the expedition ship there, and there I came first in the Soviets with big inflatable rubber things with all heavy gear water. And there's the next one on its way out. And penguins have, their enemies are in, predators are in the water, not on land. So they're perfectly friendly, walk around you and everything. So I took this as a greeting party, looking forward to the next, I can see that, we can see this. When they went into the water, that's when the orcas, tiger sharks, and, they eat them up. So this was safe, but it was just a wonderful picture that also tells about penguins. If you like penguins, that's real. There are about 100,000 penguins. Very noisy, a little bit smelly. But that's it, they go off the screen there, off the screen there. That's a lot of penguins. These brown ones are referred to as open buoys by the sailor whalers could all get on there. Because on wooden sailing ships, they occasionally spring leaks a bit, so if you put tar in those leaks, that squeezes out. Put hemp in there, it doesn't work. So they found that oakum was a mixture of hemp and tar that would work. Well, there'd always be some young boys, and they would have the responsibility of scraping the ropes and mixing the tar, and they'd end up looking like that. And what these don't realize is they're born over the winter. They're in a shed and look like that, but no more free meals. And so, but that is a remarkable gathering, noisy, and there Sally and I are. Shackleton, the reason we went down to South Georgia Island in the Antarctic is that it was with Carolyn Alexander wrote a book called Endurance about Shackleton's trip down there where the ship Endurance was lost at Elephant Island. He left most of the crew there. He and a couple of others got in a lifeboat, sailed up to South Georgia, which is quite a ways away, storms. If they'd been out a little way, either way they would have missed it. We landed where they did, and the Zodiacs and many other landings around the area. And when he landed, there was a whaling station on the other side. Now, they weren't in LLP, they weren't dressed like I was. They've been wet and water, they're about 3 layers and so forth down here. And so they climbed over the mountain, and so knocked on the door of the fellow who was in charge of the whaling station. They were surprised there was a drop-in down in the south down in the Antarctic. And so Shackleton, they tried a couple of sailing, but went back to Elephant Island and rescued all of his crew that had stayed there for months and brought them back to lose a single person. And his leadership is still, leadership course in West Point and others are still taught, because in those days when ships sailed, the officers were sort of noblemen, gentlemen, and the others were that worked on the place were kind of base. There's a real definite class difference between the two. His deal was, he had a roster. If your name is this one, and you swabbed the decks regardless of officer, that was your day. And so his ability, and even when the ship got locked in the ice and was crushed, they said, and they could see that if he could get it out to the water, that it wouldn't be crushed. And so we let the crew dig and hack and try to get, like for 2 days, and they figured out they just couldn't get out. Because he realized if he didn't let them do that, they'd always said, if you just let us do that, we could have gotten it out. So remarkable, so that's where he's buried. His wife said, they're going to take him back to England. She basically said, look, he likes him more there. So that's where he's buried in South Georgia. Went to the North Pole. That's a Russian, here we are exactly at the North Pole. You can see the size of the people. That's a Russian nuclear-powered icebreaker, biggest in the world. That's Russia, a number of years ago, occupied Czechoslovakia. The protests and the students were getting Russian watches, the biggest and fastest in the world. The Soviets used to use means Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union had collapsed at this time. The Navy was the proud service. Still, when we 90 degrees north in the run of the ship, I was up here with the captain, and maneuvering until it was 90, 0 minutes, 0 second, right around. At the power, they weren't exactly. Anyway, planted a flag at the North Pole, and Buzz Aldrin was on that expedition, and so got to know him for a period of several weeks. And exactly at the North Pole, he had these, and this says, to Sally and Rudy, best wishes, Buzz Aldrin. This says geographic North Pole, the date 90 degrees north, 10 July. And Soviets used to use. And so that's a keepsake, that picture. And sort of untold story. The only kind of conflict between him and Aldrin is the camera was a Hasselblad and it was built into the suit. So you couldn't say, okay, you take my picture of it. So whoever had the camera wasn't going to have his picture. So the deal was, okay, Aldrin gets first step onto the moon, but he has to carry the camera. So the eternal picture is of Buzz Aldrin. That's how he happened to get the camera. It was fixed on Aldrin's suit. Then up in this is up in Greenland. The glaciers, this is the end of one, but I have some other pictures, again, which up in my camera. And toward the bottom of the glaciers is such tremendous pressure that the ice tends to be bluish down here because it's compressed basically all the water in it so that it's crystal clear. And this then pieces break off and floats around, and that looks like a piece of whatever Tchaikovsky, absolutely clear crystal, a piece of ice, and when they're melting around there, you can hear them go pop, pop, as the gas expands again. But I wouldn't have known about it if they hadn't. It's a bit of a long trip to get up where we're in Greenland, but and made about a dozen zodiac landings around the east, south, and western side of Greenland. And it's a huge. Chinese well know, stockpile of rare earths and minerals, geopolitical. This is the edge of, just toss this in, this is the edge of Greenland ice cap. And goes on like a mile there, and the wash here. But Greenland is icy and Iceland is green. That one. I was married, Sally and I were married. We were a small group from Harvard, and we were in Mali, in Timbuktu. And so Timbuktu is about as hard to get to as it ever was. And it was actually the British and the French had a big prize on who would get to Timbuktu first. That was myth, but they're salt mines. And so they were part of the caravans. And so salt was worth, an ounce of salt was worth an ounce of gold. No, they didn't have to use. They needed salt to go across the desert. So it was a very wealthy, and lots of stories about it. But anyway, so the group from Harvard, long story short, the usual, can't find a convenient date for everybody to come to the wedding, so it's hold that. So we got married there, and these are the groomsmen that came the next day to pick me up. They call the blue men of the desert because there's basically no water out there. And they pound indigo dye into these headdresses, and they're very long. They can make them all different configurations for winds, for the sandstorm. And so they came around with my camel to take me out to the site where we were married. And this is, there's Sally. They made her outfit mine. I'm talking to Marabou, who's the Muslim priest of the group. And so they love a party. And so this was kind of the wedding. They sword and saber dances, and they're the only basically nomadic tribe. They still have fights out in the desert over water holes. But this is, there I am in North Arabia, and this is the Dogon area, which is part of Mali. And these people live in these areas. I mean, totally, it's like another world. And they have all kinds of rituals, but or everybody has an origin myth. Their origin myth started with Sirius, the star, and male and female descendant. Well, it was only like 20 years ago that astronomers found out that Sirius is a binary star. Who knew? But that's about as different in an environment. I won't go on about it, but there are many things that are there. This is, for something entirely different, mentioned the going down in the Russian deep submersible. This is one of the two, Mir 2. They have, as you can see, folded arms there. This is where 3 of us are, the pilot and 2 passengers. Far more people have been in space that have been down to 8,000 feet deep in the ocean. And so it's an 8-hour dive. You're in this sphere, very thick, well made. And so this one is equipped to take biological samples, Mir 1, chemical samples and so forth, salinity, and go. It's an 8-hour dive, 2.5 down, 3 to the bottom, and 2.5 back up. And a little gutsy, but as a matter of fact, typical Russian fashion. Since it's down mid-Atlantic ridge, so it's down in hot and humid area, and they're up on the deck with the top open, and so went down, closed the top, and so there's going to be condensation because the outside water is cold. So he said, water, you'll see water. He said, it doesn't taste like salt, but it's okay. So Russians are very comfortable. So going down there, when it comes up, the Russian frogman, wallowing around, trying to attach this to an umbilical cord. There's a nipple on there, and then it pulls up, and then you can see partly these two come in, but then it picks it out. But it's pretty rock and rolly. But then down in the bottom, that's 8,500 feet down. That's a black smoker, which comes out hot enough to melt lead. But living down there around the base, archaea, back here, archaea, which is the earliest form of life. It turns out they're nucleated, non-nucleated cells. They formed when the oceans melted, when the oceans formed, and they consume hydrogen, metabolize hydrogen sulfide, and so actually somebody who was with Mars, an astronaut, going to the Mars landing to sample their life on Mars, he brought some back to Huntsville so that they would be able to see whether there's any of this, because if they just checked for two, but no life, it would be this sort. So I'm not going on about this. I would happen to I met the British consulate, and the Concorde. They fly 2 round trips, Gander, London a day for the test flight. And they weren't certain that there was another Concorde, only one other. Because how do you accumulate 4,000 hours if you cross the ocean? So there's another in Paris to Oman, Paris, back twice a day. And so I got an opportunity to have a ride on this and went across and back and forth. It was mostly instrumentation, and this was after it dropped off and after the round trip to London, and they were taking off again. I was out on next to the runway with the Air Base manager, and got this picture. Pretty loud, I have to say. I'm just about through. Brenda mentioned Venner Institute and Greg Venner. And this was last year. I was the vice chairman, adjunct professor there for a while. It's delightfully located in La Jolla, also it's Rockville, Maryland laboratory. How did that happen? I met Craig by chance through mutual friends several years ago. Found mutual interest. Again, he's the first person to sequence the human genome, all 3 billion base pairs. So we hit it off, and so I've been involved there, and am now very involved and become good friends of Craig. Although he rose to that position of significant international renown when he was a teenager. He was just kind of an average teenager, kind of a bad actor. And so along came the Vietnam War. He went into the military. He was made a medic, and he worked on a MAX unit, field hospital, with the doctors with wounded soldiers. And the doctor, he was curious, learned fast. The doctors asked him to help out, and he became very curious about the human body. He came back, and in 3 years, I think it's still the record, completed his undergraduate degree in 3 years, got his PhD at University of California in San Diego, and the rest is history. And there we are. Again, we were both a little wardrobe inattentive. And so we're downtown in La Jolla. And then there's inside of the lab, right side labs, left side offices. This is like when I go out there, that's my office out there, meet with researchers and with him. What's he have in his hand? If you don't think the speed of progress on the unfamiliar. What he has in his hand here is enlarged there. You read across the top, it says DNA synthesizer. It's electronic. There are millions of little cells in there. Nucleic acids, there are basically 4 that make up the different sequences. DNA moves them around electronically, strings them together like a string of beads, and generates DNA sequences by electronic means. Amazing. National security. After 9/11, Homeland Security was formed, but also these are all the agents, 17 different agencies, and in part there's CIA, National NSA, National Security, but they're new ones like Defense Intelligence went around, but then the space reconnaissance, each of their, even the Department of State has something called INR, Intelligence and Research. So these are all the research, all the agencies that have at least some or not or all of their focus on gathering intelligence. After 9/11, it was found that various pieces had been known with, after the case put together, indicated you could have had earlier warning. So the Office of Director of National Intelligence was formed, to whom, and the organization, the intelligence pieces of all 17 of these agencies comes together. The Director of National Intelligence is in fact a woman, as is the senior military, her senior military advisor and the deputy director, all three women, interestingly enough. And so she's the one who presents presidential daily briefings. And extraordinary, complex organization that I've been all in parts of it over the years, but also there's an annual symposium in Washington, a 3-day symposium coming up this year, closed attendance. There's my name. There's Ambassador Pickering. He was our ambassador, U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union and many other positions. And about a dozen of the participants are military at the admiral general level, and also some foreign ambassadors. You can see it's relatively small group. And only a couple of years ago, I was appointed to the group that's the basically steering committee for the content and those who'd be invited, including from the U.S., but also from foreign ambassadors, to this gathering. And it's chaired by Pickering and also General Meyer, who was the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Who knew back when I was joining the Army back then that I'd ever be sitting with this group of people discussing the kinds of issues that they are, and have a position of some responsibility for this. So, again, I could backtrack at how it got there, but in terms of rejection, it was just the furthest thing from my mind that I would ever be instilled. Involved with people and responsibilities, also members of the Intelligence Committee, of responsibilities of the sort that domestically and internationally these do. Also, I like to occasionally write some poetry, and tangas are actually 31 syllables, but who counted? And so I took this picture at home here and wrote this morning sunrise, colors creeping darkness, sky like an artist's palette, brushing God's hand painting the heavens and promises. And another, when my son turned 50, he and his wife were down in Florida, and so they said, don't send anything. I said, maybe I'll write a 50-syllable, one for each year, poem for his vice president. I said, exactly all right. And so that's it. And a local calligrapher wrote this on rice paper and even to the butterfly, but the butterfly, 50-syllable, 2 years, it's relaxing. But also, it's a different kind of creativity or curiosity, I guess, but probably, can you make a haiku, which is 17 syllables, 5 sevens, 5, and it should have in that limited but very specific set of syllables an image of something that is uplifting. It's an interesting stretch of intellect, but also it focuses. And so a lot of time, in addition to curiosity, it broadens liking the photos. I think this is from one of the early Maurice Sendak, our former Ridgefield resident, pieces, and I like that everybody should be quiet near a little stream and listen. So back to the original bit of curiosity picture of the moon. And then when I was in Tibet, Lhasa, a number of years ago, I took a picture of this woman, long distance lens, with her leathery face, serene look, view shoveling the sun, and their clothes just ancient and polished, but this sort of serenity, looking out curiously, optimistically into the future. So that's into today's sermon. The time is under your control, as is my microphone. So, anybody have any questions, comments, praise, anything?
I have a rude curiosity.
Okay.
A little rude.
Okay, I'm Rudy, so
all right,
I'm
yeah. So you had to finance some of these activities, and where along the path is that the IBM part? Or
Well, I basically earned my keep over that period of time. My parents, in their generation, felt that I had a sister who passed away in the 40s, but like girls should be taken care of, boys should earn their keep. And so I was always, I had sponsorship or jobs or income that was basically sufficient. My parents did yield and provide some support for my kids' education and even for some development. But in terms of like the day-to-day, it was up to me to land the fish. And so, and I did get some grants. But on the whole, it was not digging out of the deep well and deciding what to do with it. It was like doing things and finding out how to, plant it and it turns out that cascade or something, but that wasn't very good. Fine.
Yeah. You mentioned your children. Are they as curious? Are they notably curious?
Well, if genetics means anything, Rudy, my son, Rudy 3, that stops at Rudy, you don't want to run out, but he's 33, is on Saturday, on Saturday morning, giving a course, a session, part of the overall curiosity theme of the year. He's coming up to be here 8 o'clock, and so we talked to Brendan and others about part of the curiosity, but extending to the younger people. And he's been a consultant, and he's been focused on managing operations, rapidly growing, changing technology, but he's also on the board of the Western Museum of Science. And so he's very much been interested in stimulating young people to become curious, as Meg and others, teachers here. If you don't get the interest or curiosity, and particularly toward the sciences, by middle school, you're not going to get it. So this point is to, even if it's, I'm making it up, but like a straw, paper cup, and some glue, make something out of that and get some reward. And so, yes, that extends to him. The other boys, I have no daughters, 4 boys, and probably good for any potential boyfriend if I had a daughter. And the 4 boys are each in their own way, curious, independent, and they're younger, and they haven't had the variety of experiences I've had. But sometimes when I travel, I'd say, I want to go on a trip, well, sometimes 2, sometimes no. And so they said, Dad, you go on a trip, say yes, and figure out where later, because it's going to be a cool trip. So yes, my sons are curious and value the results of that curiosity. The reason the card, which you mentioned, the International Man of Mystery, and my email address, it given to me by my older son, where he laughed about a few birthdays ago. But basically it said there's a lot of white area in here. You were gone a lot when we were younger. Maybe you could fill in some of that white area. So I'm in the process of trying to fill in some of that. So not sure that answers the question.
We'll hear and then we'll go there.
It's a neighbor.
Rudy, it's such an interesting life. If you had a chance to do it all over again, what would you do different?
That reminded me of some Charlie Brown. If I had Charlie, Lucy said to Charlie Brown, if you knew then what you know now, what would you do different? And he said, what do I know now? That's part of it, but I was also thinking of Lucy and Charlie Brown, curiosity, and the picture of them lying in the field and looking up at the clouds. And so Charlie Brown says to Lucy, what do you see? And she said, oh, this going on, the winged victory of Salmon Trace. And Rembrandt's Night Watch, what do you see? He said, a doggy and a horse. If I had to do, I mean, it wouldn't turn out the same way. As I said, we all start with a blank passport, and it ends up sometime being filled with queries.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a wonderful insight into you. I think many of us grew up as you did as little ones, free to explore and not be worried about by our parents, which I think fostered curiosity in our generation. My question to you is, do you have concern about today's young people, the electronic devices and the helicopter parents, who are not allowing boredom to enter into the lives of their children, because I think boredom fosters curiosity?
Well, I mentioned it before, and there's some teachers in the audience who know a lot more about that. But I firmly believe that having had leisurely time, having had my parents got Collier's Encyclopedia next to that, I could pull off a piece and read about it. And the bulldozer parents that clear all problems out of the way. I can't imagine a worse way to send your kid off to college or any place without ever being confronted by. Even when kids are learning to walk, they fall down and get up, parents don't yank them up and somehow lose that lesson. And so I think that over busy, overindulged, and my granddaughter and her brother were very good swimmers. And so she went to Colgate, she graduated. But when she applied, talking to the admissions director, he said, so many people are trying to fill in all the blanks and all the squares, community service, this. We'd really like somebody who shows that they do something well and do with something. So again, the teachers could tell me much more about it. I know someone who retired. She was a lower school teacher at Louisville schools, right across the board. And in the school there, lower school teacher, and she said, and she's retired and moved up. It's a river where kids live, and she said, it used to be that, during teacher conference, you could have a free knowledge exchange, but you can't say your child is disruptive or you hear from the whole year. So that insulation from reality is not good potty training, for life. And it really, again, I have an educator up here to speak. When I say educator, like the new math, which is understood neither by teachers, students, or parents, is a result of the decision of education. I say if it's designed by educators, it's designed by teachers. Now so I think some of the curriculums are designed by educators and parents guided by consultants. And being competitive. I mean, my gosh, when the kids, far more people in Ridgefield ever went to the Ivy League school, of course, there are kids to go. And it's no big thing. It's not for everybody at all. I had two colleagues two friends and colleagues at Hudson Institute. They both gone to Kenya. They loved it. And they went on to get their PhDs, University of Chicago, and he's a senior national security advisor, and she, but they went to a school that's perfect for them. and getting a PhD at the University of Chicago was tough, but they weren't forced to go there. So anyway, I can talk about this for a long time, because I don't really want to do that. But it's certainly observable, no question.
Look at the woman right there. And my guess is that you would actually have been with her, or him, I'm sure it's a her. And what kinds of things did you learn from that woman?
Well, I actually did. This was a telephoto lens, and she was standing around. But I could see, the person and seeing her. But I'd been in Tibet for a bit, and so I had some mixture. But it captures this a whole combination of things. But the fact that her meager, environment, her warm clothes and so forth, hadn't destroyed her serenity. She's about as serene as you can. And it just, I didn't have any interaction with her. It wasn't just, but it was so captivating at the time. I still think it is. Somebody
Thank you
has
so
to
much.
put the flag down here if you want. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for this fabulous talk. And I just want to add that Sally was the most wonderful person, and she could find any book I ever wanted that wasn't even in print. So I have such great respect for who she was and who she is. I just wonder if you had ever talked with each other or on your own thought about writing a book about your insights and experiences and memories. Have you ever thought of putting that into a book?
It's been forced upon me. And I'm trying to skitter out from it. I've got about 150 pages, single-space type, but I'm going to be cornered. I'm working on appendices. Because again, the papers I've written, they're classified for national security, published, and so, and those you can't kind of summarize or make a footnote. So the penny is going to be as big as the book is likely to be. But it captures, I was saying to Brenda, that to have but the uncollecting, my house has a certain disarray. It's got from my office down into the kitchen and up into the dining room, and so that's the reason I haven't been a guest for 50 years I've been in Ridgefield. But yes, I'm trying to put together that, mainly because my kid, the card with the empty spaces, and it's kind of fun to do it. It's just, there are other things that take my time, and I'm less interested than they are. So, but it's, I have admirable objectives.
So I think we would all agree that when the book is written, we'll all be coming back to for the book signing.
That's why there's no book signing today.
There's no book. But I want to